Kathleen is looking at them and saying like, get rid of him, you know, screaming at them and stuff, right? So bear in mind at this point, there's 4 flats in 17 Richmond cottages. There are 2 Russians who live upstairs and they don't really speak English. There is a vacant flat and there is a woman, like a girl who lives there on her own, but that she's never really there. So it seems like they have free reign of noise and stuff. So I just want to say, they're all telling different things to the Gardaí later, right? But they all will say that he was trying to rape Linda. Like he was going to rape Linda, he was trying to rape Linda. And then obviously, like, even though some of the sources say what they say about that he grabs Kathleen and stuff, then it always seems to be he was going to rape Linda. He was trying to rape Linda. So he was going to rape Linda? I don't know, I can't tell. But like, sometimes they're like, no, he was trying to rape her. He was, you know, and I don't know, not that I believe women when they say stuff like that, but I don't know, I just feel like, I know he was grabbing her and stuff, maybe I'm just going on a little bit of tangent. I just feel like I know he was grabbing her and stuff, but I don't know, I feel like I hadn't, now we know he was a rapist, but I feel like I wasn't at that point. So anyway, I don't know, we'll just come back to that later, okay? So Linda will say that what they do next is Charlotte's idea. And Charlotte will say that it was Kathleen's idea. So also, if you want to like skip this part, you can. But this is what you came for. So Linda and Charlotte drag Farah's bloody body into the ensuite. Now, as I said earlier, it's a small ensuite. It has a shower, it has a toilet, and it has a sink. So they drag him in, and they try kind of put him into the shower. He's not really fitting, so they pull him back out. So they have a Stanley knife, they have the hammer, and then they also get a bread knife. Charlotte pulls Farah's jeans off him. She then grabs his left leg and starts cutting just above the knee. This is obviously, like, the knife, it seems like, again, like as the pathologist would say, it seems like the knife was kind of going through, but then when it came to kind of like the knee or the kneecap, it wasn't. So then that you needed to use the hammer to start kind of trying to break down the kneecap. At this point, Linda is just sitting there. She's sitting on the toilet, I think, just crying as Charlotte is like hacking and hammering away at this leg. And then eventually the leg comes off and they like throw it into the shower then. Linda then seems to, you know, obviously get a bit of courage down or whatever, and she starts helping. So she starts smashing at the other knee. And so they cut that leg off again above the knee. And then they cut off the thighs, the 2 thighs. So that's the 4 leg parts. And then they're just like that, throwing it all into the shower, okay? So there's just blood everywhere, as you can probably imagine. And it's this little ensuite. Linda would say that she had to keep taking breaks to like catch her breath and stuff. But that Charlotte was just going at it. And then eventually it kind of got to the point where they were tired and stuff. Because bear in mind, like, they, again, as I said, they are running on ecstasy, alcohol and adrenaline. And so then they started to take breaks. So one of them would kind of go at the body and someone would sit there on the toilet relaxing, or I think even like they said that they'd go have a smoke and stuff. They even said that they would the smell, they were saying like they'd go out and when they came back the smell would be horrific, like that. There is blood everywhere. So Linda actually goes off and gets loads of towels and comes back, and like as soon as she puts them down, they're soaked in blood. So she starts then having to like run them under the water in the shower and like, you know, wring them out and then use them again and wring them out, all this to get all the blood. Then the shower starts, you know, like there's kind of like the little base starts flooding, like starts rising up, because the water's not getting down, because there's now like blood and bits of bone and hair and all down there. So Linda, the thought is, so Linda then has to like put her hand down the drain and like fish it all out, and then she throws it into the toilet. And so then kind of starts getting the water to go back down. So then they cut the arms. So I had always kind of just thought like they cut them here, you know, like where like this bit, your armpit, but they don't. They actually cut it kind of like here. So there's still the little like bit, the stump, I suppose. And so they do that to both arms again, like that, cutting, smashing the bones with the hammer and stuff. And then they move on to, now we obviously have literally the head and the trunk down to penis and bum. And so they then are going to cut that essentially. So again, like that, they're obviously cutting the lower half kind of from the bum down to, yeah, just basically the bum, cheeks down, and whatever's the equivalent on the front. And so when they cut across the stomach to obviously do this, like his intestines and stuff come out. And Linda would later say like the smell was horrific, and that she didn't like, she afterwards she would shower and shower and shower and all, and she would just never get the smell out of her nose. It was horrific and it never left her. So like that, all these bits are out and stuff. So they eventually do cut that lower bit off, and then so the lower bit obviously has like the little white underpants, and then they pull the jersey back down to try like keep it all in and hide the smell. At this point, Linda says that she remembers her mom telling her that Farah had raped her before. And so she then pulls down the underwear, grabs the penis, and slices it off. And then like throws it in with all the rest and says, now you'll never rape me ma again, you prick. At this point, again, they kind of don't really say who decided to cut the head off, but it is decided that it will be easier to not identify him if the head is not with the body parts. So they decide to cut the head off. And so Linda says like she can't handle like Farah looking at her or whatever, so she puts a towel over his head. And then like that, they start hammering at the neck, you know, for the bones. Hammer, hammer, hammer. And then they have like their knee on his torso, like to hold it and like hack away. And then like that, they're obviously holding the head. And so Linda, she's cutting. And then like as it obviously comes apart, she like drops it like. So that is the 4 parts of the legs, the 2 arms, the 2 parts of the trunk, and now the head and neck. And Charlotte says, I need a drink. So they both go into the kitchen and pour themselves another vodka. Again, bear in mind, Kathleen is just sitting there watching telly. They would later say that it took them about 4 hours to do all this. So at 11 p.m, they start putting the body parts into black bags. They put all the towels, they put the duvet, because that obviously now was all covered in blood. At this point, Kathleen's obviously now involved, let's say. And so it's decided that she's going to tell everybody that Farah ran away with an ex-girlfriend down to Kilkenny. So she starts like packing up all his clothes and belongings and stuff into black bags as well. But now the problem is that none of these drive, none of them have a car, and they need help. And so at 1 a.m, John Mulhall's phone rings, and he immediately recognises the voice on the other end, and it is not a voice he likes. And so he basically says to Kathleen, like, what you want? And she says, Charlotte and Linda are here with me. There's something wrong. You need to come. So obviously he's annoyed, and he's like, oh, do you know what I mean? But again, it said like he would do anything for his daughters. So he's worried that something has happened to them or whatever. He actually, one of the sources says that he's actually worried like would one of them have overdosed. So he goes. So he gets there. Kathleen answers the door. He just rushes past her. I was like, what's going on or whatever. And the girls come out. And so Kathleen just says, Farah's dead. The girls killed him. And John is like, what? So he's like, where is he? No other answer. And he's like, where is he? And eventually Charlotte says, he's in the bags, Dad. And John looks down at the black bags by the doorway, and he opens one and peeks in. And he says, Jesus Christ, no, you're on your own. And leaves. His car skids off. At this point, the adrenaline is gone, and the girls crash. And so Linda grabs Charlotte's hand and goes back into the bedroom, and they lie down on the double bed. And Kathleen is like, where the fuck are you going? Like, get back up. We need, like, you need to clean. Like, get up. You need to do this. Like, and they just ignore her. And Linda says to Charlotte, like, let her worry about it. And so they fall asleep. So Kathleen does worry about it. So Kathleen then goes and fills the kettle and boils it. And then she puts 2 pots of water onto the, like, hob or whatever and starts boiling them. She then takes out, like, bleach and cloths and sponges and stuff. She then goes into the bathroom with the kettle. And starts like pouring it onto where like all the kind of heavy blood is. So that's washing it off, washing it away. And then she literally just like lashes the bleach everywhere and starts scrubbing. And then so she goes back and does the same with the other pots and stuff, like throws them and stuff, scrubs, bleach, all of this. And so she's going. So about an hour and a half later, she goes into the bedroom and says to the girls, like, get up, I need to start on this room. And so they're obviously like, what? And so they get up and they go into the bathroom to see it is spotless. The bathroom looks cleaner than it did before Kathleen and Farah were living there. So they then take over. So they basically start doing it again, filling the pots of water, filling the kettle, pouring them, scrubbing, all of this, getting into, like the grooves of the tiles and stuff like that to really get in and try get rid of all the blood. Kathleen then obviously starts cleaning down in the bedroom wherever there's blood and stuff like that. And then they're looking at the floor of the bedroom, and the carpet is literally like squelching because it's soaked with blood. They managed to unblock the toilet of all the stuff, but later tenants would all say that there was a problem with the sewage. So they're looking at the carpet and like there's no saving it. So they don't have time. They say they don't have time to like move everything and like pull it up. So they take the Stanley knife and they just start like cutting off the sections where the blood is. And when they pull it up, they're relieved to see that it hasn't soaked through to the concrete. Kathleen would then start saying later that there was a cockroach infestation and that's why she had to take up the carpet. So a different apartment had the cockroaches, so she knew this, so she started saying she had them then. But I mean, if that was true, right, would you not be taking that entire carpet up? So all the carpet is up. And then Kathleen tells the two girls to strip because obviously they are destroyed in blood. It's funny, no one ever mentions them having a shower, so I don't know if that's just a given because surely they would have had it everywhere. I'd say like it had to have been in their hair, it had to have been everywhere. But it just says that all the sources just say they changed, so maybe that's just a given and I'm overthinking. So Charlotte, as I said, stays there, so she had clothes, so that was fine. And then Linda actually had a purple jumper that a brother had given to her mom, I think, and then her mom gave it to her, like, like as a gift. And obviously she didn't really want it, so it had been in the flat. So she put this on, and then she must have borrowed jeans or something, I'm not sure. When they were taking all like Farah's stuff, putting it in the black bag, Kathleen takes any coins or cash or anything he has, all his jewellery and his bank card and his phone. Charlotte would actually take the jewellery and later on she would actually sell it on the street. And then all of a sudden at 6 a.m. there was a knock on the door. And obviously they were like, oh my God. So they were like, no, don't say it. And it just kept going and going and going. So they looked out and saw it was their dad. And he took the bags of the towels and the duvet and all those bits. And he says, like, what you've done, it's on you. You can deal with that. So he takes all of this stuff, puts it into the back of his van. He then hugs his daughters and leaves. So at this point, they need to figure out what to do with the body parts. So obviously they can't go really far because they don't drive. They say about like, the bin or whatever, but the bin won't be collected like till the end of the week. So they can't because obviously just the smell, people would know. And so they decide that they will dump the body parts into the canal. And as I said before, it's actually the same canal that Adrian Bastille was dumped into before. So I don't know if like that's kind of why they done it, because they knew that had happened. Because if you're just going to go by that logic, Adrian Bastille was found, so why would you do it again? So I don't know, maybe they just thought of this great idea by themselves. So at 7 a.m. they left Richmond Cottages and walked the short distance to Ballybock Bridge. Linda was carrying a sports bag that had Farah's 2 arms, and Charlotte had the larger sports bag that had his torso. So at this point, Kathleen's like attitude changed towards Farah. Like then it was all about like, oh, like he's gone and he was great and they're great memories and all of this, and it actually kind of like pissed Linda off. So she was like, I'm just here to like, because she's like, I'm not bringing his body, this sort of thing. She's like, I'm here to remember. They eventually like they kind of go under, they see there's no one around, they literally just open the bags and dump the bits in. They make sure to see that they sink, then they go back with the sports bags. And then they say that it took them about 4 or 5 times to do this. And later on, they would be caught on CCTV doing this, Linda and Charlotte. It's interesting. Kathleen seems to be on very little CCTV throughout all of this. So eventually they get everything gone. Now, the head. There was no point to like getting rid of the head to just dump it with the rest of the body, because the whole idea is if the body did somehow get discovered, if the head isn't there, it'll be harder for them to identify. And if they can't identify that it's Farah, they can't come looking for Kathleen and the girls. After all this is done, Linda says, I'm starving. And like Kathleen again is like looking at her in disgust, she could be thinking like that. And so Charlotte, to wind up her mom, is like, yeah, I'm starving too. So they put Farah's head into like a camera bag, you know, like an over the shoulder camera bag. They're like discussing where to bury it and stuff like this. And it is decided that they will go to Tala and bury it in a park there. But before that, Linda is starving. So they go to the Gala, like deli, you know, like Gala supermarket, like Gala little shop that has a deli on Summer Hill Parade. They are seen on CCTV here. And so Linda and Charlotte, I think, queue up at the deli. Kathleen goes in and just buys like a bottle of water or whatever and then goes back out. Charlotte goes out, she doesn't get anything. And then so Linda gets her roll, her breakfast roll. She gets a large packet of crisps, like a multi-pack of crisps and cigarettes, and then goes outside. And she has the camera bag on her at all this time. So she's like ordering it, yeah, no, and a sausage and yeah, no, ketchup, yeah, with a decapitated head on her shoulder. So they go inside, and so like she plops the bag down and then sits to like eat. And so she's eating her roll, and the other two are just sitting there smoking with her. So this is all seen on CCTV as well. So they then walk to the city centre and they get the 77 bus to Tala. So they are sitting on the bus. So this is now Tuesday the 21st. And I imagine it's still kind of early morning. I don't know if it's rush hour traffic, but they're on the bus. There are people on the bus with them, oblivious to the fact that there is a head in a bag. They get off of the square. They walk through the square with the bag, okay? And that's what people are like, oh my God, they walked through with the bag. They were on the bus with the bag. But it is mad. And so I had thought maybe because the bus would have left them kind of at the top floor. There's 3 floors in the square. It would have left them at the top floor, I think. That's the only part I know that has buses. Where they were going to was Sean Walsh Park. And that would have been kind of more on the first floor, like the lowest. Then it's actually like that they stop. They're in the square and they stop to like look in windows of shops and stuff. And then so like that they eventually get to Sean Walsh Park. And so they spend hours. They spend about 3 or 4 hours wandering around the park looking like where is a good place to bury the head. Sean Walsh Park is also referred to as Timon North Park. And so I'm just going to read my notes because of this little bit. So basically, Charlotte doesn't care, okay? Linda says, like in bushes, to bury it in at bushes, but that Kathleen says no because these get trimmed regularly. Kathleen then says, we'll bury it in a ditch. And Linda says no because what if a fox gets at it? And then Linda says, in at the trees. But the trees must be near the stadium, the football stadium, because then Kathleen says like no because like the stadium is always busy, there's always people around it. And then so Kathleen then says to put it like near a school. And Linda goes berserk because she's like, there's a chance then, like there's kids there, there's a chance then of a kid like discovering it and all. Like, and then like that just in one of the books, it says like, what if a kid accidentally came across the head? Her own childhood had been screwed up. She didn't want to be responsible for anyone else's nightmares. Kathleen was raging that she was once again being partly blamed for Linda's past. She could take that one up with her father. Sorry, that's just kind of where I was saying, like, there's the whole thing about, like, her, as it, like, her childhood and stuff like this. So again, I don't know, was it just because there was, like, drink and the man was being abused, or was it more direct with the kids? You know, I don't know really, to be honest. So, in front of the lakes, and if it's the lakes, I think there's also like a playground near it, so maybe it's not those lakes. But they sit down on a bench, right? Linda is just, they're all exhausted, obviously, and Linda sits down, plonks down, and Kathleen's annoyed and sits down on the other side of the bench. And again, this is all going on and blah, blah, blah. And Charlotte just is like, shut the fuck up to 2 years, right? And just drops to her knees just behind the bench and starts like clawing with her bare hands to dig a hole, right? And so like she's struggling obviously. And then Kathleen like takes out, she goes like this, you know, like this, and then takes out the Stanley knife from her bag and hands it to Charlotte. So Charlotte's like cutting away basically at the ground. She gets like a wide enough hole, but it says like the depth is like her hand. The depth is like that, right? Maybe that, okay? And puts the head in and starts trying to cover up the dirt, right? So again, right? The width of a hand, right? So I don't know how you thought that was supposed to be enough. Even if it was that way, it still wouldn't really be enough. So she puts all the dirt back over and you can still see the head. You can still see the hair and all, right? And so she starts trying to like stomp down on the head to like get it under. And you can still kind of see it, but at this point, I think they're all just like, I don't care, it's done, right? And then she kind of says like, no, that's grand. Apparently Linda's like, I can't believe, like, we've killed a man, like we chopped him up, like nothing is grand, nothing will ever be grand again, kind of thing. Kathleen then takes the knife and like that wipes it down and stuff, and then throws it into the lake. Charlotte and Kathleen are like, come on, let's go back to, to the flat, and they'll have a few drinks, whatever. And Linda is just like, no, it doesn't want anything, wants to go home, like, so she heads off back to Jobstown. And Kathleen and Charlotte head back into the square for a cup of tea. When Linda gets home, she actually burns the camera bag, like puts it on the fireplace and burns it essentially. So when Farah doesn't show up for work for a couple of days and the job can't get in touch with him, they ring Kathleen. And Kathleen says that he left her for another girl and had moved down to Kilkenny. The murder and dismemberment obviously took its toll on Kathleen and Linda and Charlotte. So Linda was like really struggling, and obviously then like kind of turned to more drink and more drugs and stuff like that. She was having like nightmares every night again, like that. She couldn't get the smell out of her nose. She just wasn't sleeping well. Linda is like increasingly worried about the head, like, that where they left it wasn't a good spot. Right? She was afraid that it was going to be found, and so she would actually ask Charlotte and Kathleen like to go with her to like dig it up and put it somewhere else, and they're like, no. Charlotte seems to kind of just pretend that everything goes okay, but again, she continues to kind of binge and stuff like that. And at the end of March, she actually started going out with a new guy, and like that would sit with him at the canal drinking cans and stuff. Kathleen becomes obsessed with cleaning. So like the next day she continues cleaning, and then another day another. She's kind of always cleaning. She goes back and buys more bleach and more, all this. On the 23rd of March, Charlotte goes to an ATM using Farah's card and takes out €60. And then on the 30th, the day the body was found, Kathleen took out 150. Even though Charlotte was, like that, trying to pretend everything was okay, after a couple of days when she had been drunk and she was back in the house in Jobstown, Marie came home from work and found her like that. She was all upset and stuff. And she starts telling Marie what happened. She starts saying that they killed Farah, that they cut him up, that they dumped him into the canal, all of this. And by this point, his body hadn't been found. And so Marie kind of just thought she was like drunkenly kind of like just rambling out a story, like. And so she listened around, she was like, okay. And then so she went off out or whatever. And when she came back, Charlotte was sitting in the sitting room with the dad, like just normal. So she was going like, okay. So just that was it. So when the body was found on the 30th, Marie and John Mulhall are sitting in the sitting room, and he says kind of like God, like that's, it's a horrible thing or something like that, right? And Marie obviously doesn't know about him having been involved, and then Marie is also thinking in her head like, oh, like what Charlotte had said to her. So the both of them are sitting there not really knowing that the other person kind of knows something. So the head, there are two park rangers, Robert McGovern and Brian Malloy, and they go through obviously like kind of, patrolling the park and stuff like this, and checking for rubbish and checking people aren't doing what they're not supposed to be doing, all this stuff. And they come across the head, and like they have a look, and they actually see the hair. They can actually see the top of the hair, but they decide that it's a dog, and they think like it's the belly of a dog, and so they leave it. They're just like, oh, okay, whatever. Now I would probably imagine that if someone is burying their dog in a park, a public park, that they probably should have arranged for it to have been removed. But they don't. They're like, okay, and they leave. Then a retired like army officer, Lar Keegan, would go to the park. One of the books says like he goes to the park for a drink and a smoke. And so he goes, and like that he's either sitting at this bench or he's just passing or whatever. And he sees it. And by this point, the body has been found, all the parts have been taken. And so there is an unidentified black man has been found, right? And so he sees this thing and he's kind of like, what is that? And he starts to think it looks like a human head. And because the body had been found, and the whole thing about the head never being found, he kind of says like, oh my God, like could that be the head that everybody's missing, that everybody's looking for? And so he goes home anyway and says like to his daughter, like that he thinks he's seen a head buried in the park and that it could be belonging to the black man who had been found in the canal. And the daughter tells him to get a grip. So anyway, he decides to ring the park ranger. And the park ranger's like, no, it's not, it's a dog. And he's like, no, like I really think it's a head. Like I really think it's a human head, and I think it could be connected to the case of the body that was found in the canal. And they are insisting, they're like, no, it's a dog. We've already seen it, like it's a dog. We can assure you, like it's a dog. So that's that. So like I just don't understand why they weren't doing their job. So Lara goes back, for a few days, every day, and like he really thinks it is. Like he's like, that's the head. Oh, like at this stage it's saying like blue bottles and all are like eating the head, okay? And then like that, after a few days, he comes back and it's just not there. There's no head there. There's nothing there. On the 30th of March, Linda was just like, she's so bad. She's not sleeping. She's just, she's not looking after her kids or anything. It's like John Mulhall is essentially looking after the kids. I don't know why I feel like I have to say John Mulhall every time I say his name. She rings her mom again and she's like, I really think we need to move the head. And again, Kathleen's like, no. So Linda decides to get the bus in to see her. While Linda is walking across Ballybock Bridge to get to Richmond Cottages, she looks down and sees like, the Gardaí and everything all around it. And so she runs to her mum's house. She tells her mum, and they both kind of go down for a look or whatever. And then they go back and they're just watching the TV. Like, so they're watching like the news, and every news round or run or whatever. They're just watching it and it's saying that body parts have been found. And so then the next day, Linda and Kathleen go down again. And by this point, obviously, the body has been fished out and all this stuff. And so Linda even says to someone, like, oh God, like what happened? And they say like, they found a body, they found body parts for lunch. She's like, oh my God, that's awful. And so obviously they go back again, they're freaking out. And then it will be discovered that another time Kathleen goes back and Charlotte goes with her this time. And again, they're looking over at over the bridge and stuff. And obviously the media are there, all the newspapers and stuff, taking pictures of like pictures I put up and stuff like of the Gardaí like in the water, doing this, all this stuff, right? Kathleen and Charlotte are caught in a photo looking over, and obviously it will only be later that they realise this, but like they're there on the bridge looking down. I have tried my very, very, very best to try find that photo and I can't. So if you source it somewhere, let me know. So obviously then that's it. Linda's like, no, the head needs to be moved or whatever. So long story short, Kathleen tells the landlord that Farah has left. She then obviously says that she's going to look for another place because she can't afford that one. He says, yeah, but you have to give me 2 weeks notice. But he said like, well, pay me next week and then you can go or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'll stay. And he obviously comes in one day and sees the floor. And she's like, no, there was a cockroach infestation. And he's like, no, because he's like, no, I know it was in the other place. And the exterminator or whatever had checked everywhere, and he was like, it wasn't here. So Kathleen actually does then go get carpet, like a cheap carpet, but like again, she gets kind of like a sample work kind of type thing, and it's like patching it down. So the landlord then actually eventually says to her that there's a flat vacant upstairs and that she can take that if she wants. She moves in with 2 Russians, right? By early April, she is now living in a different flat in 70 in Richmond Cottages and is living with 2 Russian men. A single mother and her 3-year-old son move into Kathleen and Farah's flat. I remember thinking, I was like, oh God, isn't that just awful? I mean, I know they cleaned it and all, but it's still like, ooh, because it's still all the same stuff. It's the same beds and it's the same everything. I just really, when I read that about the 3-year-old, I was like, oh. So she's one of the people who would say that there was a problem with the sewage going forward. Kathleen would tell her like that the reason she had to move out was because like that Farah had left her and she could no longer afford it. The woman would notice a big blue ring in the bathroom on the floor on one of the tiles. And I read that this can be a reaction to blood and like chemicals, the cleaning chemicals and stuff they've done. So that can have left the mark. She would actually later she says she finds a passport, like down the side of the bed or something. And then it's an Irish passport, but that like has a weird name, like a foreign name or whatever. And so she gives this to the landlord. She also says like that when she was moving kind of the beds around or whatever, that she could see like that there were parts that were just bare concrete. Charlotte begins a relationship with the other Russians, right? So his name is like Dilmarat. So she begins a relationship with him, and for a while Kathleen starts seeing the other one who's like Alex, but that doesn't last very long. Then they're in flat 3 and they move out then and into flat 1, which is Kathleen and Farah's flat. And he moves in, so there's like 4 of them living there. And they move into that flat because they got evicted from the other one, right? They're all the same landlord. I don't know, why would you evict someone from one and then put them into another? They're there, and then eventually they leave. They're evicted again, I think, from there. Charlotte actually starts getting worried about Linda because she really thinks like she's gonna go off the rails, and she just needs to keep an eye on her. So Linda and her 4 kids move into flat 4. So now there is Kathleen, Linda, Charlotte, the 2 Russians, and 4 kids. And it is said like that they would come home, they'd come back, and then they'd be drinking all night and stuff like this. Like, honestly, really do. Like, the kids just had, like, from so many different angles, they just had this awful upbringing or awful childhood. Like, so in April, then Linda is back at the dad's, right? Linda decides, like, no, she needs to go move the head. And it's like 10 o'clock at night. And she goes down to Shamrock Park. She sits down first at the bench, and she would say like that, like she's having hallucinations. Like, she would say Farah is talking to her. She even says like something like he has a beard now, or his hair grows, or something like that. He looks a bit different. They're having a conversation and stuff. So she then digs it up, like with her hand, like clawing at it to get the head out, like that. She pulls it out and she puts it into a black bag. She heads back right up to the house, and on the way up past Kilnarden Park, she puts the black bag into bushes, like deep into bushes that she knows no one will see, right? And goes home and goes to bed. And then the next morning she gets up. She takes her son's school bag and like empties all the contents out of it, the pencils and stuff like that. It's said as well that another time Charlotte took a bag belonging to one of her other kids. So those 2 kids were going to school then, like with like like a shopping bag or whatever, like a little plastic bag with their stuff in it, like their pencil case and all this. So she takes the kid's backpack and heads out. She puts in it a hammer and a bottle of vodka. The bottle of vodka, the go-to one in the press, she takes that, heads down to Kilnarden Park, takes the black bag with the head in it and shoves it into the school bag. And then she heads off. So then she walks about 40 minutes to Kilnarden Hill. And in here, she like climbs over the gate to get in, and then she walks through like a couple of fields and stuff until she gets to near a ditch. And so she sits down, right? She kisses the bag, right, with Farah's head in it. She then takes a hammer out and starts like smashing it, and she says that she can hear it like shatter. And then she starts drinking the vodka, and it's gone pretty quick. And she falls asleep. And so she wakes up a couple of hours later from the cold. So she walks over closer to the ditch, and the mud and all is kind of like soggier, it's wetter here. So she's able to easily dig a hole. So she says like, I'm sorry, Farah, it shouldn't have been you, it should have been my ma, and all this. And so she then takes out the black bag and like tips out its content, right? So I wanted to say this because there's a whole thing after this of, where's the head? The head has never been found. Oh, there's a head somewhere in Tala, like all this stuff, right? When they killed Farah, she was like going at his head, right? So his head would have already been crushed or damaged or whatever, right? And then it was in the hole, it was being like eaten and everything, right? And then she took it and she starts hammering it again. So she says like she can hear it shattering and stuff, right? She then says that she tips the contents into the hole. Now, to me, that makes it sound like it's no longer a head, right? It's now bits, like, right? That's what I get from that. So that's all tipped in. And then she digs it all up, right? So when we're saying like if there's a head somewhere, there's not a head. There's like the remains of a head, like bits of bone and whatever else, like, but it's buried in this patch or whatever. She then takes the black bag and the school bag and set them on fire. And then that's that. And then she throws the hammer into the ditch and she runs home. And she would say that was the first night that she like slept all night. Around all this time, Linda has a pregnancy scare. And so it is decided, she says she wants to go to England for an abortion. Because remember, at this time, you can't have abortions here. Kathleen and Charlotte decide like, oh yeah, it would be good for us all to get away for a little while, right? So they decide to go with her and they're going to go over to Manchester. But in the meantime, Linda then goes to the Coombe and is told that it was a pregnancy scare. She's not pregnant. So she decides she doesn't want to go anymore. But Kathleen and Charlotte were like, well, we're still going. Okay, so they go. So they get the ferry over to Holyhead, right? After their next dole payment. They head over. And they stay there in like a homeless hostel, right? So whatever amount that cost them. And then they sleep in a park for the next 2 nights. And then they go back to the hostel. And then, so kind of like on the third night by this point, maybe the fourth. And then they get the train into Manchester. Here, Charlotte starts like talking or speaking or whatever to an English fella. And so he starts buying the two of them drinks and stuff like this. And then they go back to his hotel room and Charlotte has sex with him and they stay there. And so the whole thing is kind of like, she done it. Now, I mean, she was a prostitute anyway, but it was kind of like she was sleeping with him for them to have somewhere to stay for the night. So then it is said that Linda had told them that she would follow them over, right? And bring money with her, maybe on the next doll payment or whatever. She is supposed to, but then like that, Linda doesn't want to go, so she doesn't go. And so they have no money. So they ring the social welfare in Dublin and they arrange for 2 tickets on the ferry to come back. So sometime in between April and July, the two boys are in Wheatfield and Linda, Charlotte, Kathleen, they'd all visit them. Like the others probably visit them as well, right? And Kathleen's there and she's all really like worried and this and that. And they're kind of like, what's wrong, ma'am? You know? And so she tells them that Linda and Charlotte killed Farah, cut him up, put him in the canal, all this. Like, told them everything. And they didn't believe her. And then so when Linda was visiting, they asked Linda. And Linda confirmed that it did happen, but wouldn't go into details or anything for them. But asked James to look after her kids if anything was to happen. So back to the investigation. On the 21st of May, they track Farah's last known address to flat 117 Richmond Cottages. And when they get there, they obviously expect to see like Kathleen, right? And she's not in flat 1, she's now in flat 4. She doesn't want to talk to them there. She says like Farah left her or whatever, right? But she doesn't want to talk in the flat with the lads and stuff, right? So she says like, I'll get ready and I'll come down to the station. So she comes down. And so basically she says that Farah left in February. She hasn't seen him since February. That he went off with another girl. The Gardaí know at this stage that she didn't tell the landlord that he left until the 25th of March. And like at this point, she tells them that he was violent and all this stuff, but says like that she was never raped, that he hit her and stuff like that, but that was it. So then the technical bureau went into flat 1 and examined it and stuff. And it would later be said that the place was spotless, like that the girls done like such a good job at covering it, like, you wouldn't have thought what happened there. They took swabs then of like that, the wardrobe, the different parts of the bathroom. There was like a mirror, the wardrobe, the bunk beds, all of the different bits they took. I don't know actually if they took carpet. I never actually read that, but you would think so because it says that they see, like they're like, there's not a whole carpet here. And so I would assume maybe they took a chunk of the carpet. The technical bureau would go back later to obviously examine the place more, and so they had to arrange for like the tenants that were now there to go stay somewhere else. I think it was 2 women to stay like in a hotel or something while they were there. But they used, right? It's interesting. They used luminol. I'm sure you've heard of that by now. But this was the first time in Ireland that it was used to trace or detect minute blood samples. And so they done this and they were able to see little bits. And again, like by this, they saw like in like the grooves of the wardrobe and this, like that's how they saw it. It wasn't just like, oh, there's a blood spot on the wall or whatever. It was like teeny little bits that were just obviously too impossible to get. They would also find like blood splatter under the bunk beds because when Farah fell, he was on the ground and so it obviously would have splashed up and stuff. They were able to access his bank account and so they checked, and like that they could see that on the day that his body parts were discovered, he had withdrew money. So they checked with Vodafone then, for his calls and texts and stuff, and they were able to see that it had been used, right? And so in the time that he had been dead, and they were actually able to trace the phone. They managed to trace it down to this guy who didn't know anything, right? Like, and when obviously asked how he got the phone and stuff, he says that he bought it off a colleague. This man worked for City Glass. And so he says that the man that sold it to him was John Mulhall. So obviously John Mulhall is brought in and asked like why he has Farah's phone. And he says that he didn't know it was Farah's phone, obviously, and he says that one of his daughters gave it to him. And like that's kind of that. I just think it's weird as well, right? I can't remember how expensive SIM cards were back in 2005, but even then, I think you just had to buy credits. So you had to buy like your €20 credit or something, and you got a new SIM card. Why would you buy a phone and keep the SIM card that was in it? Like, keep that number. I just think that's weird. On the 11th of July, James Mulhall got in touch with Gardaí to say that they could name the body in the canal and that they could even say who killed him. And so he said like who he was and that he was in Weefield prison. So two Gardaí actually go out to question James and John Mulhall, and they tell them everything. And then two detectives go because they're like, oh, and again they tell them, and they even say like that the dad helped them. They even say in one of the shots, they even say like that Kathleen had planned it, and we're going to get to that. And they would say like that they were disgusted that their family, that their family members had done this and stuff like that. But then they started to say like that they wanted to be moved, right? So they said they were worried about being basically found out as like rats, let's say, right? They didn't want anyone knowing that they were telling the Gardaí this, and they wanted to move. So originally it was they wanted to move to Castlereagh Prison, which is in Roscommon. And then it was like, no, if we can't go there, then we want to go to Shelton Abbey, which I've spoken about before, which is the open prison in Wicklow. So there's like a lot of back and forth and stuff. So even though they had the information, then like the lads just shut down and they were like, no, we're not giving a statement. We're not signing a statement or anything. So that was kind of it. So they did have the information, but that was it. On the 15th of July, the DNA came back to confirm that it was Farah Swaleh Noor. On this same day, actually, the swabs that had been taken from flat 1 were confirmed that they had blood. And so this is when they went back. And it was on July 19th that the two lads stopped cooperating. So with this information and evidence, arrest warrants were issued. And so I'm going to read from my notes, right? So August 3rd, 4 different teams of detectives were all sent out to do the arrests. Now, the newspapers kind of got wind of this, that was actually happening. And the reason they were doing the 4 at the same time was obviously so that no one got spooked and were able to get away. And the Herald were going to run the story the day before or the evening before or whatever, right, when they knew about it. And so senior detectives had to get involved and contact the newspaper and all and tell them that they couldn't do it, this and that and all. So they didn't. So at 10:15 a.m, Kathleen was now living, so she was now kind of like in Dublin 7. And so she was arrested outside the post office as she was waiting to get her social welfare. And she was taken to Mountjoy Guard Station. Then at 10:25, near Kilclare Garden, so she wasn't in it. She was out going to shop or something, and they were obviously keeping track. They arrested Charlotte, and she was also taken to Mountjoy. Then at 10:40, they arrived at the house. The other detectives arrived at the house and arrested Linda, and she was taken to Store Street Guard Station. Then at 10:55, they went to Turner College where John Mulhall was fitting windows or whatever and arrested him. And he was also brought to Store Street Guard Station. So all of them were there for 12 hours. They all had the like swabs done, like the different blood samples, saliva swabs, all of this jazz, okay? Fingerprints, photos, everything. Obviously, they were all asked if they wanted solicitors. Linda would say no, but she said she wanted her dad to be told that she was there. So obviously, she didn't know that he had been arrested as well. So in the 12 hours, Linda was interviewed 4 times, and she would just keep insisting that she wasn't in Ballyrock. But she is told, like the witnesses say, that they saw her on O'Connell Street, and then they even showed the CCTV from the gala. I'm going to read a bit. So basically, they say, that she has denied being there to try cover up the crime, and she says, "It's not that I tried to distance myself. I honestly can't remember being there, unless I must have been drinking. I'm not supposed to drink when I take these tablets." So she was on like blood pressure medication. She was played the recording of her brothers telling on them, and she kind of got like real annoyed and she's like, "That's not my brother, like that sounds like a junkie, that's not my brother." They then showed her photos of the body parts, and at this point her like confidence was knocked. And at 8:31, she asked for her solicitor. So like that, she spoke to her solicitor, this type of thing, and then the interviews resumed, obviously. But still, after the 12 hours, she was released. Charlotte was interviewed 5 times in the 12 hours. And again, Charlotte was a lot more confident and very closed off, and she just, like, nothing fazed her, and she just kept denying that she was there. She would say, like, she can't remember her birthday, that because she was drunk. She said she hadn't seen Farah since February. She would also be playing her brother's tape, and again would say, like, she doesn't know why he's lying, that he's fucked in the head. She said, like, they didn't know anything because no one was involved. So even when they were saying things like, you know, about the penis being cut and stuff, and they'd be like, oh, was this like a sexual thing and all? Like, Charlotte didn't flinch. So she said, I can't remember any of my birthday this year because all I done was drink. Surely you must have woken up at some stage sober. Not if you drink as much as I do. Did you always drink a lot? Yeah. I don't really do much but drinking, so there's not much to remember. In the 12 hours, Kathleen was interviewed 6 times. And she didn't want to solicitor and stuff like that. And she would tell Gardaí that my kids may die, I didn't touch a hair on his head. And then she kept kind of going back and forth. So she'd be saying, like, no, we're just friends. Like, so we kind of come and go whenever we want, this type of thing. So that was more casual when he left, you know. But then she would go on to be kind of like I gave him 3 years and, you know, loved him and this and that and all. So you're like, so were you his friends or what were you? Like, you can't keep, you know, she was kind of fitting the narrative to what question they were saying. So she would say that they had been drinking on the 20th in O'Connell Street, but that they all kind of split up then. So obviously the girls went off, whatever. And she says that her and Farah split and she went off to work, you know, as a prostitute, and that she doesn't know where he went. And she says kind of like then that when she came back the next morning or whatever, all his stuff was gone. But before you said it was February when he was gone. She said that she started to have breathing problems. And so the doctor who would pronounce the body parts dead, Dr. Faki, he came, and so he checked her and she was saying, like, oh yeah, no, because I've asthma, like this, I've COPD, all these things. And so, like, she didn't have her inhaler. She was like, no, I lost one on the way here and I forgot the other one at the flat. She couldn't name the pharmacy she got them from. She didn't have a regular GP, any of this. There was nothing wrong with her. So the interview resumed and they asked her about CCTV of her shopping in the gala and getting, like, bleach and bin bags and stuff like this. And she said, like, well, everybody buys bin bags. And then she said she got the bleach for a pair of white trousers that she had spilled cranberry juice on. And then she said that she couldn't explain why there was blood in the flat. When she was told that, like, the boys, like, that her sons were horrified, she would also say that it was, you know, that's not them or whatever. And then when they said, like, when the detective said, oh, like, your sons were horrified to hear, like, you done this, she says, not as horrified as I am. My sons told you nothing. They would tell you nothing because they don't know anything. John Mulhall was interviewed 3 times. And he said he couldn't explain the phone. He said he had never been in his ex-wife's flat. I say ex-wife, obviously they hadn't been divorced at this stage. They said that CCTV picked up the van in the, you know, that area. And he said that it was a work van, that anybody could have been driving it. But they did check this out and it was only him. You know, they checked with other colleagues and it was only him who drove that reg. So they were all released without being charged. Kathleen left. She went to Carlo, told no one. It would be later said, like, that Charlotte was saying, like, she wouldn't even answer her texts or anything to her. Linda started using heroin again. Charlotte was at this point 2 months pregnant and she was still working as a prostitute. And then John Mulhall was just like struggling to try to keep the rest of the family together and stuff. The Gardaí agreed that they thought Linda would be the weak link, and so that they kind of thought putting pressure on her. They also thought that John was a decent guy, and they thought, like, that again, if they kind of put pressure on him, that he might crack and say something. On the 12th of September, Detective Sergeant MacDonald got in touch with Husna Saeed, Farah's wife, back in Kenya. She would fax a copy of his birth cert. She also faxed, like, letters and stuff that he sent to her. And these would all have his real name on them. It also turned out like that he rang his mother every week and, like, that sent money home to everybody. So at this stage, Marie is, like, going mental because, like, the dad and all has been arrested. And so she basically, like, isn't talking to Linda or Charlotte. And then because Linda is obviously in the house and like that, she's basically like that. She's just gone, like, do you know what I mean? She's not looking after kids or anything. Marie says to her, like, if you don't tell the guards what happened, I will. John would also tell his daughter, like, that thought it was just best if she told the guards the truth. And Linda agreed. So on the 17th of August, John Mulhall rang Christy Mangan and said that Linda was going to talk to them and could tell them where the head was. So they came by. Linda wasn't there. Like, let's say I think they were supposed to kind of, like, meet at, like, 6 o'clock or something. They waited for like over an hour, and John was ringing her, and she was like, yeah, no, I'm just in like to get, like, she was in for a dole and stuff. He's like, no, I'm on the way back, this and that. And she never shows. And the reason she never shows was because she was in telehospital after slitting her wrists. So 2 days later, on the 19th, Christy Mangan and all come by again. And so like that, she comes in, and I just want to say, like, it's always very like civilized. Like when they meet, they'll always shake John's hand and stuff like this. They meet Linda, and at this point I think they might, like, I don't know if they're shaking a hand or anything, but like later by the end of it, like she's hugging them, and it has always been very kind of, I don't know, civilized is not the right word, but Linda just wouldn't speak to them. And so eventually they left. And John says, like, did she tell you? And he said no. And she goes, okay. And so he says, I'll get Marie to come down tomorrow and give you a statement about what Charlotte told her. But only 3 hours later, Christy Mankin got a call from Linda, and she was crying. And she was like, Christopher, like, I need to talk to you. And he asked, like, did she want to talk about the murder? And she said, yeah. And so they came by, and like that, they went out to her little bedroom out the back. And she asked her dad to leave while she told them. And she told them everything. She told them everything, right? But she told them that she didn't want to go down to the Garda station to do a statement or anything. So they took it there, like they wrote it, whatever. And then she signed it. She then showed them where she had buried the head. So she brought them up to Kilnarden Hill. And they went in, and like that, Christy Mangan is like helping her over the gate, you know, all this, that's what I'm saying. And then they go in, she shows them, they go through the field, she shows them kind of like, this is where it is, this and that and all that. Like she shows them everything. So she goes to the flat, say, yeah, it was here, this flat and stuff. She shows them where the head had previously been buried. Like she does everything, right? So obviously these areas, like where she says she buries the head, is all sealed off and stuff. They recover the knife from the lake in Shawmwatch Park. They never find the hammer in Kilnarden Hill, and they never find the head. So after all this, obviously, like they drop her home, and she gets out of the car, and like that, she hugs Christy Mangan crying. And when she goes inside, Marie is there and says, like, you know, did you tell them or whatever? And she says yeah. She starts to say kind of like, you know, and that she went to show them and stuff. And Marie says, I don't want to know anymore. Now you've told them, they can leave Dad alone and can deal with you and the others. And that was it. Marie would never talk to any of them about it again. As I said, over the next couple of days, Linda is showing them everything. So through all these days, like, she's not arrested. They never arrest her. They drop her home and, you know, all this. Then on the 21st, she is asked to go into the guard station and do another statement, like, and she does. And then on the 14th of September, they go to the house to arrest her. And again, like, it's all so civilized. Kids are gone off to school, right? So even then they say, like, they wanted to wait till the kids were gone to school. They didn't want to be doing it in front of them. She's cooking and stuff like that. And so she stops. She goes to, they say, do you want to put a few bits together? And she says, I've had my bag packed since the beginning. And then so she goes, and they let her go change and stuff like that. And then they leave. But she's not handcuffed or anything. They just walk her out. So they obviously bring her to Mountjoy. And at 11:22, she is charged with murder. She is then released on bail. So all around this time as well, obviously, John is trying to tell his other daughter, Charlotte, like begging her, like, you need to tell them all this. And then on September 1st, they go to her, like, she's now staying in Artane in a flat. And they go to her, and basically she says, like, she knows, they're saying, like, oh, Linda told us everything and all. She knows that they don't have anything because otherwise they'd have an arrest warrant for her. And so eventually, on the 13th of October, John Mulhall called him and said that Charlotte has agreed to speak. So on the 17th, they arrived, and before she left, she went in and hugged Linda. She was brought to Mountjoy Garda Station for her next interview. So at this stage, she is basically saying, like, she's still denying it. So she says, like, that they were out with them that day, drinking and stuff. They went back to the flat, and that around 7 or 8, her and Linda left. And so the whole thing is, right, it's like back and forth. So she's like, we left around then. And they're like, okay, and then what did you do? And they're like, oh, we just went drinking. They're like, yeah, but where did you go drinking? They're like, just all around town. And this is going on for so long, but she is so composed, right? She's just like, oh, like, just all around, right? And then they're kind of saying, like, we have CCTV all over the city centre. Name somewhere. And even one of the detectives says, we're like, if you can name me somewhere that you were and you're on it, you can leave here. And he's like, and I'll give you €1 million. And then it's the boardwalk. They're like, the boardwalk. And she's like, yeah. They're like, so if I look now to CCTV of the boardwalk, you're going to be there. You know, all this. And it was going on for so long, just back and forth. She was an owl, hard nut to crack. Eventually, she was saying, like, that they did come back, like, they came back at 6, and that her mum, like, that covered in blood, all this, and that Farah was cut up and everything, right? Basically it says that they came back and like came upon this scene. And they were like, well then why would Linda tell us, you know, that you done it? And she's saying because we had told my mom. My mom was saying, oh my God, she's gonna go to jail. And we said no. If we're caught, we'll tell them we done it, right? And then she's kind of saying like, but I don't know why she said that. Like we wouldn't have gone through with saying that they done it for the mom. She admits kind of like that they helped get rid of the body parts in the canal. She even says about Linda, like, I think she's fucking mental, to be honest with you, because she's saying she done things that she didn't do just to protect my mom. At this point, Charlotte is pointing out like that her mom just kind of disappeared, you know, and wouldn't answer or anything. So she's kind of like, so like, I owe her nothing now. So while they were kind of talking about her, like Kathleen was cutting up the body, she got emotional for the first time. And they said to her, like, why are why are you getting upset? And she was just kind of saying, well, it's not a nice thing. I knew him. Like they even say to her at one point how Farah had gotten messy and aggressive and all this, right? And they kind of talk about how had she known that he was violent to their mom, this type of thing. She said, yeah. And so they kind of said, like, so you left your mom with him in the flat, knowing, you know, what he has done and that he was in an aggressive state, like this type of thing, trying to obviously get her to guilt her and stuff. Finally, how they got her was they put it back to Linda and they basically said, like, you know, you love Linda. She's like, yeah. And she's like, you'd do anything for her, you know, you care, all this stuff. And he said, you're not helping Linda by not telling us the truth. And eventually she cracked down and said, I'll tell you the truth. And so they said, like, okay, like, what happened? She started crying and said, everything Linda told you. Obviously, eventually they had to go through it all again with her anyway. But that was it. They finally cracked that nut. At 9:40 p.m, she was charged with murder. It was noted that 9 times during all that, Charlotte was asked if she wanted a solicitor, and she just kept saying no. Now, I just want to say at this point, before I forget, a few bits, because like I kind of have a feeling right now, as I said, it's only really what they've told us. I have a feeling like there was more to it. I feel like we don't really know what happened. One of the things is, I feel like Kathleen could have planned it or could have had it in her head or something and took advantage of the situation. And one of these things, on the 10th of March, Lulu Swale, so she was Farah's cousin back in Kenya. They would like send each other stuff and all, right? And so she had sent a parcel to Farah. And on the 10th of March, she rang. She couldn't get through to him, let's say. So she rang Kathleen to see like had they got the parcel. And Kathleen told her that Farah had left her. So that's dodge. And then here in one of the books, Charlotte, after saying everything that had happened, right? What's your view on what happened that night, Charlotte? Are you annoyed with your mother over it? I can't be annoyed with her. We're the stupid ones that done it. Would you say there was a point in the night that made you go from just arguing to killing him? What made you? And she says, the way she kept going on, just telling us, he's going to kill me, he's going to kill me, you just have to kill him. And they say, right, but what specific thing happened? Was it him grabbing Linda? Yeah, I think so. That turned you? Yeah. Are you saying the decision to kill him really came from your mother? Yeah. She made a decision in relation to that? Yeah. When the decision came to cut him up, are you saying again that the decision was made by your mother? Yeah. Did she make it there and then, or did she have to consult with someone? I don't know. She just kept telling us she'd think of something. She would think of something to do. And whose decision was it to drag him into the bathroom? She told us to bring him in. Whose decision was it to cut off his head? I don't know. You don't know. Or to cut off his penis? She shook her head, saying she didn't know. Was that done for any reason? I don't know. Or was his head cut for any reason? She again shook her head. Was there any reason why he was chopped up? We didn't know what else to do. John Mahal, when he went home that night, brought all the stuff and put them into his shed. And then on July 13th, kind of, things were heating up and stuff, so he wanted to get rid of them. So he actually went to his employer's, Harry Byrne's house in Leixlip. Harry Byrne was away on holidays. And so he went in and started like dumping the stuff. There was like the River Liffey was behind it. So he started dumping the stuff. So the duvet and this and that. And he even brought his bin because I think he had put the stuff into the bin to keep it there. And this neighbour 2 doors down is like out enjoying the sunshine in the back garden, just watching the Liffey, listening and all. And then there's like a duvet floating down the water. So then he sees other few bits. So then he looks up, 2 doors up, and you can see this man dumping all this stuff, right? And obviously he's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, and so he actually goes back out when the man is coming in. He goes back out the front and looks and sees the man get into like a little van and stuff and go off. You know, obviously that's John Mulhall. But it's just mad now. He obviously finds it suspicious and does contact him to be kind of like, was, you know, there was someone on your property or whatever. And they're like, no, I think they say no, like the gardener or something was there the day before. No one should have been there. Now, this would eventually get back to the Gardaí, and the Gardaí do search and really find anything conclusive. On December 8th, Linda and Charlotte are out on bail. Linda is back at the home, and Charlotte, I think, is still kind of a bit everywhere, right? Marie, her dad John, and his brother Eric are out for a couple of drinks. And then they stop to get food and they're going home. And like that, John picks up extra food for like Linda and the grandkids and stuff, and they head back. But when he arrives back, Linda is like crazy and she's going mad, she's very upset and all. And she says that Charlotte has taken her Christmas money. So, you know, to buy presents for the kids, that she has taken that money and she's going mental and stuff like that. And she says to her dad, it's your fucking fault that we're in the trouble we're in. You've never fucking done anything for us. John eventually calms her down and says like he'll get the money back off Charlotte, you know, and she starts getting upset and she says, you know, like it's you know, it's the Santa money, you know, this type of thing. And he's like, no, I know it is, you know, we'll get it, this sort of thing. And so she goes off to bed or whatever. So at this point, Marie and Eric had gone upstairs, right? And then after Linda calmed down, John went upstairs into his bedroom. And then he comes back out, and Eric comes out to the landing and says, like, is everything okay? And he says, yeah. And he says, I'm going to go out and find Charlotte. Now, whether John tried to find Charlotte or not, like, where would he even go to try to find her? I don't know. But he goes out and he leaves through the front door. He then goes around to the back garden and takes down the rope for the washing line. He gets into the van and again could have went other places first to try to find Charlotte, don't know. But he goes to Phoenix Park and he walks into like some trees and commits suicide. You can guess what I'm going to say. He would write on a £50 note to Marie saying that like he leaves everything to her. Gardaí would say that they believe John had more like involvement in the murder. Some actually believe that they don't think Linda and Charlotte could have cut him up, and they believe that he was involved in this. There were some calls back and forth from Kathleen and John on that night and stuff that he hadn't been able to kind of explain. But they kind of say like, was this it? Did it all just come to a head? And that's why he done this. Like obviously the girls had been charged, all this. We don't know. Obviously you don't know what goes through someone's head for these things. Like that. Was that just a final straw? Linda saying like, you know, it's your fault. It's because of what you done in the past or whatever. And that's why we're where we are. Linda and Charlotte would go on trial on October 12th, 2006. Even in this time, right, they got into other trouble. Like, you know, like again, it's just in their nature. They just done whatever they wanted to do at the time. Charlotte had a baby boy on May 28th. And it was said that she was a little doting mother. Linda didn't show for the first day of the trial. It was a whole thing. It is said that she had actually tried to commit suicide again. And then eventually they get her into the court. By this point, Kathleen has left. She's now fled Ireland. She's over living in England. They both pled not guilty to murder. There was a jury of 6 men and 6 women. The trial lasted 9 days. They did not testify, so the jury could only rely on their statements that had been given to the Gardaí. And there was different witnesses called, so the Rangers, Lara Keegan, Marie, Mohammed was called. Basically all the players in this story were all called. The court was packed. Like this was a huge case. And so like the court was packed and it'd be like only standing room for people in the media and all. Like if you weren't there dead on, you weren't getting a seat and stuff. It was crazy. The jury then go to deliberate, right? And they are reminded that they can also say like guilty of, you know, manslaughter for self-defense or for provocation, as well as guilty for murder or not guilty altogether. So on the 25th, the jury began deliberating at 12:30. The following day at 1 p.m, like they haven't agreed. So the judge then tells them that a majority verdict of 10-2 will do. At this point, they ask for clarification of self-defense and provocation, the definitions of this. Friday afternoon, they go back and tell the judge that they're in a deadlock. The judge says to them, "You're not the only jury in the building deliberating for this time. There are 5 children who have a vital interest in this, as you know, and we're anxious to reach a conclusion. If you are in any doubt as to the evidence, you should resolve it in favour of the accused, and if there's any further help I can give you, I will be delighted to do so." The jury come back then at 6:30 and they say they're still deadlocked. Justice Paul Carney is the judge, so he asks for them to just give it another half an hour. And at this point, he basically says to the judge, "You have unbalanced what up to now has been a balanced trial." Basically afraid that he was kind of tipping the jury towards acquitting the women if they thought the evidence wasn't strong enough. And he basically said, "Let's get real, Mr. Birmingham." They do come back and they say, like, we can't, right? We need a rest. So they rest, and the following day they come back and they have a decision. Charlotte Mulhall is found guilty of murder with a majority of 10-2. Linda Mulhall is found guilty of manslaughter due to provocation, and this is with a majority of 11-1. After the verdicts were read out, Linda said, "Thank God it's over." The family, the brothers and all were there at this point, and they all hugged and, all this stuff. It's at this point that the media then dubbed them the Scissor Sisters, by the way, right? There's no scissors involved. I don't know why that was the moniker they came up with. The band, Scissor Sisters, were asked about it, obviously, and he says, like, "Oh, you've made it when they name a killer after you." The girls did not like this name, the Scissor Sisters, because they thought it made them seem like they were monsters. On the 4th of December, they received their sentences. So Charlotte obviously got life and Linda got 15 years. At this point in Ireland, this was only the 3rd case of mutilation. One is Shamahanji, which I done. He killed his girlfriend, Hazel Mullen, and then dismembered her body and stuff and burned it. And the other one is Michael Bambrick. If you want to hear about that one, let me know. So they're in the Docus Centre. And it is said that they're kind of feared and they're kind of ooh, all this. And so it is said that Catherine Nevin, the Black Widow, was not happy. She was real, she kind of, say remarks about them, whatever. But people were saying it was just jealousy because she used to be the queen bee there. She would have been kind of the most notorious prisoner. She arranged her husband's murder, When they were doing Linda's, sentencing, her solicitor obviously said, about kind of her troubles, a good mother, blah, blah, blah. And straight away when I heard it, I was like, no, she wasn't. I'm sorry, but she wasn't, right? And I'm glad. So basically, the judge says he doesn't agree with that, right? And so he gave the 15 years. And he says, "As far as you've urged on me that she is a good mother, I don't regard this as particularly persuasive. If she was a good mother, she would not have got herself into a situation of this kind." And I agree. Do you agree? Let me know. In the beginning, just after her sentence, it was said that Linda wasn't coping well and she had to be kind of kept an eye on in case she attempted suicide. It was said that she just lay on her bed all day sobbing and would just be crying, saying 15 years, 15 years, 15 years. Her defense team did appeal the sentence, saying it was too harsh, whatever, but it was dismissed. It is said that what kind of gets Linda through is the visits from her kids, and that she would kind of brag to the other prisoners how well they're doing in school and this type of thing. The kids did go stay with James Mulhall originally, and then they were then taken into foster care. So as I said, Charlotte had her baby. They had asked for her baby to be allowed to stay with her because if a prisoner has a baby there are units kind of set up to keep the child with them. I think it's up to a year usually, right? Now, her child, I think, is about 8 months at this stage. Now, I didn't know this. I thought it could have been for Annie. Reasoning is for if you were breastfeeding. That's obviously supposed to be the reason that the baby has to be with you at all times. But Charlotte wasn't breastfeeding, so this was kind of so it doesn't really matter. And even I read that for the breastfeeding mothers, at 9 months then it's evaluated to kind of see if the baby is assessed to see if they still need to be breastfed, which is interesting because then you're kind of ending that journey for them. But I mean, also they're prisoners. So she wasn't allowed. So what kind of happened was agreed then was she would see the baby a few hours a day, spend time with the baby up until, I think they said a year, but then I think it went to 18 months. Now, they said she was a doting mother, all this, and she'd, just loved it. Because they were basically kind of like, the prison service and stuff were kind of saying like, why would you take the baby from like a a healthy, caring foster family, like a safe, a safe area, and put them into a prison with all this stuff around them, like, like criminals and addicts and all of this. Kathleen was eventually tracked down to London. She was going by her maiden name, Kathy Ward, and she had dyed her hair blonde, and she was now living with a convicted rapist from Sierra Leone. She really seems to have a type. So when she was found, she agreed to come back. So in February 2008, she was charged with obstruction of justice. So basically for cleaning the crime scene and stuff like that. So in May 2009, she went to trial. Now it was said that there was actually originally 9 charges, and it's because she pled guilty, it was put down to the 1. And so she was sentenced to 5 years. I think she kind of done about 3. She was released in 2012. And then she actually went over to Leeds to live with James. So at this point, James is living over there. Now, it's kind of confusing because in other parts of the book, when he had gone to prison for your man who died and stuff, it says his girlfriend is in the car and her name is like Tanya. Then this girl in Leeds is Margaret, but it says that they were together for years and they had moved from Dublin over after the infamy of the trial and stuff to get away from it. They have a couple of kids together anyway. The mom goes to live with them, and then she says like Kathleen kind of keeps telling him, like he'll be saying kind of like, oh, like you shouldn't be doing that. That's the woman's, you're doing too much at home and this and that and all. And so eventually Margaret leaves. She's kind of saying like, if she doesn't leave, I'm leaving. And she leaves. She goes back to Dublin. And like that, then James says that he has thrown the mom out. But shortly after she goes back, there's an incident where I think he says like, like, oh, do you want a cup of tea or something like that? And she's like, oh yeah, I'd love one or whatever. And he goes off to the kitchen, but comes back. And as she turns around to take her tea, he stabs her 12 times. She is then in a coma, but she recovers, like she goes on. Linda was released in January 2018. And it was said when she was in there like that, she kept a low profile. The 2 girls actually worked in the hair salon. Apparently the other passengers, the other prisoners, called it Head and Shoulders. She got really into that and she got into beauty and stuff. And so when she came out, then it was said that that's what she wanted to get into. She had actually had like begun an affair with a male prison officer in there. When this came out, then he took early retirement so he couldn't get in trouble or whatever. It was said that she kind of believed that when she got out, then they were going to be together, but he was married with kids. And so he was like, no. When she came out, her daughter, I'm not going to put it, I haven't named, I know their names and stuff, I'm from looking at stuff, but I'm not going to name them. There's no, it doesn't need to be done. But anyway, her daughter puts up a thing on social media kind of saying, like that her mom took a rapist off the streets, that she had done her time and that she should just go live her life and stuff now. It was on her social media, so a newspaper obviously took it. So like her picture and all is out there. So I'm not going to, if you want to look it up, just put in Linda Mulhall, and you'll see it. There are photos then. She puts up photos of her and Linda, and like Linda looks so different. Now, in fairness, one of them just has filters on it. It said she was living in Newbridge in Kildare, and then it said she was living in England, so I'm not really sure where Linda actually would be at this moment. But she had said when, like a newspaper kind of asked her after she had been released, she said like, I don't want to talk, like I just want to get on with my life. I don't want to be making statements and stuff. And it was said that she actually legally changed her name then. Kathleen kind of done a few interviews and said like she says she was dying. She has like a hole in her lung and she needs surgery and stuff like that. And she's waiting. I think Charlotte even said she'd donate a lung, this type of thing. She visits Charlotte, so she sees her and stuff. But Linda wants nothing to do with her. Kathleen has said that she has, kind of like reached out and she hasn't come back. She won't come back to her and stuff like this. Kathleen, it seems kind of like that. She came back when she was released and stuff. James then had to get her to leave and this and that and all, right? So she came back, and then I hadn't actually known this, right? Source says that Kathleen was a member of the traveling community, like the settled traveler, right? And after getting married, apparently she kind of turned her back then on like her family and stuff and just cut contact. That now after like that 30 years of not speaking to them and all, because she's kind of stuck, she has no one, she's kind of reached out now asking for help and for them to take her back and this type of thing. So I'm not really sure where that stands at the moment. Again, just if you look it up, like some of Linda's other kids have gone on then to commit crimes. Her daughter, she's like, I think she was like sports person of the year and stuff like that. in Tala, and I think she does a lot of volunteer work and stuff. So, you know, she seems to be a good egg. But I did come across other things like that. Her sons and stuff had gotten into trouble. And again, I've spoken about it before, like that's what you learn, that's what you grow up. And obviously they had an awful childhood. Like, you really can't blame how they are now. The whole thing I was saying about with like suspended sentences and all this stuff, right, is it's all well and good saying like, oh, you know, like give them a suspended sentence or whatever because, you know, they had a bad childhood, or they're addicted to drugs or this or that, whatever, right? If we're not gonna look at the root causes and help more and step in more and stuff like this, then it'll just keep continuing. It's just gonna be a cycle. Like, it needs to be nipped in the bud. These things need to be looked at sooner, you know. And that criminal barrister that I was talking about before, that's what he said. There needs to be more intervention to stop it when they become adults. It needs to be done when they're still kids. So we're on to Charlotte. So Charlotte is still in prison at this time. She has done like 16 years at this point, so she's kind of coming up to the average life sentence. Kind of fly through her bits, right? In 2008, she also lost an appeal, actually. So remember, the judge kind of was like, go back, go back. She had said like, so that the judge had put pressure on them to reach the verdict or whatever. This was denied, dismissed. The kind of most infamous thing was in 2008, a picture was leaked that had been taken on a mobile phone, right? It is a photo of Charlotte and a male prisoner, Dennis Gibney. Now, I've said male prisoner, you're probably thinking, no. They are in the kitchen and it's his birthday and they've made a cake. And Charlotte is sitting beside him and she's smiling. It's like the only time I've actually seen her smile, right? And she has a knife to his neck. So this obviously went crazy, like, right. It actually came out a few months after, but he had been released in July, I think it was. So they kind of figured out it had to have been done before that. So it had been a few months before. And then obviously there's the whole thing about the phone. They're not supposed to have a phone. So who had the phone? All this. Charlotte actually lost like all her privileges and was transferred to another prison. In 2009, then, it says that she began a relationship with a fellow prisoner, Karen Kelly, who was in for 3 years for assault. And when she was released then in 2012, she gave an interview saying how much she loved Charlotte, that she had sent her like a wedding ring. She couldn't get married, but she was kind of saying like as nearly like a promise ring type thingy. She had gotten tattoos for Charlotte. In 2015 then, Karen died, she passed away, and so it was said that like Charlotte was very upset. I don't know if they were still in the relationship by then, but it was said that she was very upset to hear this. In February 2014, she was in trouble for having alcohol and for fighting with other prisoners. In May 2015, it is said that she burned another prisoner with, like a tongs, like a curling tongs. In 2017, she had a relationship with a male prison officer. And this was discovered because while a female prison officer was in her room talking to her, he was discovered in the bathroom, hiding. He was then moved from the Doka Centre, and there was a probe and stuff, but I don't know obviously what happened then. Was he just punished or was he let go or whatever? I don't know. In 2018, she was transferred to Limerick prison, right? So obviously it's further away from Dublin. And so she was saying she wasn't getting visits and stuff. So, it was kind of like impacting her rights or her life and all this because she wasn't able to see family and stuff. Now, I think this could have been because also in 2018, she was caught in like a compromising position with a female officer. And then she says that it was that she was giving her like a beauty treatment. And so like she was like sitting on her lap to give her the beauty treatment. So in 2021, she actually took action, like an action lawsuit, to say like this because she'd been transferred and she wasn't allowed to see people. But by the following year, it had been resolved then because she had started to get several visits and stuff like that. And in November, I was going to say of last year before, November 2021, she had her first day out, obviously escorted. And she has had a couple since then. And so people are kind of gearing up to kind of saying like, oh, like this is it now. She's going to be released soon. Because that's kind of what usually happens or whatever. But she also asked to be released for Christmas and she wasn't. Now, apparently there was a lot of people asking and they only let kind of, X amount out or whatever. So she didn't get it, but that could have just been because so many people asked and it was Christmas. But I don't know, I feel like because it is such a big notorious kind of crime that they will make her do a decent amount. Like maybe not 20, but I feel like 16 is not enough. Like I feel like maybe they'll wait till 18, because that kind of seems to be the general average now. And that, lads, is the Scissor Sisters case. Oh my god, I don't know if I've forgotten anything. I hope I haven't. Oh my god, at this stage, if I forgot something, it's not. It's if something fell out of there, it ain't going back in at this stage. If you make sure you watch the first one. There's also like a little thing at the end of the last one. Let me know what you think of the case and stuff. You know, if you remember kind of when it happened, like I remember, you know, it happening. And someone actually in the comments said that when it happened, the the police, the guards, were like, we suspect foul play. Yeah, I thought that was funny. I didn't know that. So yeah, let me know what you thought of the case. If you didn't hear of this case before and you did watch the 2 videos, let me know what you think, okay? And yeah, we're just gonna leave it at that, okay? I've said okay about 50 times there. Let me know, what do you think happened? Do you think it was simply like he was going to rape Linda and then in that moment that happened? Do you think there was more to it? Do you think John Mulhall was involved? Thank you for your patience with doing the 2 videos. And I'm hoping to do loads in 2023, so working on a few bits and hoping to grow, you know? So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Do the little bell or whatever you do. And then tell your friends, tell your homies. Jack Balls. Okay, yeah, right. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye.